Hi, folks. This is Nick Mancuso, and welcome to America's Midnight Mysteries. In my 40-year career as a professional Hollywood international film star, I've played many detectives, cops, CIA, and FBI agents, good guys and bad guys. From Cloud 10's Christian movies like Tribulation, Apocalypse, Revelation, where I played the Beast 666, to my series Stingray, Matrix, Call of the Wild, and over 300 films spanning 4 decades. But on today's show, brought to you by Maverick Investigations, we're going to be talking about the real deal. This, folks, is not a TV show or a Hollywood movie. The people we're going to be talking to are live and in the real world, and make it their jobs to catch the bad guys, from corporate criminals to international terrorists, from cases of individual fraud to common murderers. Maverick Investigations is dedicated to the work of uncovering and nailing the real criminals of society. And this is a show dedicated to uncovering America's hidden mysteries, the midnight mysteries that keep us all awake at night.
Hi, folks. This is Nick Mancuso, and welcome to our show. We're going to be talking about America's Midnight Mysteries, and we have a couple of really interesting guests. We have with us Kevin Henson, who's going to be talking about cyber wars, and also Hollywood actor Michael Pare, with whom we are going to be discussing extraterrestrials and aliens. Are they real? These are the Midnight Mysteries. Folks, these are strange and troubled times. With the American economy collapsing all around us like the debris and smoke and destruction from 9/11, most Americans, it seems, don't have a clue about what's really going on. How did America go from the top of the heap to almost third world poverty in less than 15 years? The signs were all around us, but no one wanted to believe. Now, with 47 million Americans on food stamps, it's hard to ignore the truth of what's happening, and this show is dedicated to helping you and to us uncover the truth about what's really going on and the people and organizations responsible for what's happening. We intend to find the truth. We intend to ferret out the truth, for then and only then is there going to be any hope of changing our world for the better. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking about the Midnight Mysteries. Kevin, are you there?
Absolutely, sir.
How are you?
Just great.
Good. So we're going to be having Michael Pare on the show pretty soon. He's going to be calling in from New York. I'm in Toronto, Canada, and we also have Kevin Benson. Kevin, are you there? Or Hanson?
This is Kevin Benson. I'm right here in Dallas.
Oh, good. And Kevin, we may as well start with what we've been talking about, which was brought up in the last show, which is the whole nature of cyber war and the use of computers to absolutely transform and change our world. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I can. This is part of what I do every day. At the cyber
and you do it in the real world. I mean, this is not made-up stuff. This is something you actually have been dealing with for a while.
You could say that cyber wars started back around 1988 with the Morris worm that dropped a large part of the Internet at the time. And that there's been low-grade cyber wars between nation-states ever since then. The Russians
and this is going on. This is going on as we speak, isn't it? I mean, this is something.
Oh yeah, right now there are 11 major cyber conflicts being conducted today. You can go out to cyberwarnews.info, and the Indonesians and the Australians are going at it at the moment. You've got things going on in Italy. You've got Syria and Syria at war with itself. You've got Syrian hackers attacking the United States. You've got Chinese hackers attacking the United States. You've got Pakistani and Indian hackers attacking each other. This is going on live 24/7, 365.
Now, this is run. Is this correct? By General Alexander, the recently formed U.S. Cybercom. And apparently,
yes.
I told the Senate Armed Services Committee that computer network warfare is evolving so rapidly that there's a mismatch between our technical capabilities to conduct operations and the governing laws and policies. and it's all very real, it seems.
Oh yeah. Well, the policies have never caught up with the capabilities, and the United States is very much on the sidelines and on the losing end of most of these cyber conflicts. I mean, a small group in Syria calling itself the Syrian Electronic Army was able to penetrate U.S. news services, U.S. government sites, and even the AP, Associated Press newswire. And back in May, I believe it was May, they released a statement on the AP wire that the White House had been attacked by an explosive device, that President Obama was injured. The stock market dropped 200 points in 10 seconds.
Right.
And the Syrian Electronic Army is only 150 people, and it's run by Bashar Assad's brother. And they're able to conduct operations all over the world, sitting right there in Damascus.
Now, apparently in 2010, security experts discovered a malicious software program called Stuxnet that had infiltrated factory computers and spread to plants around the world, and apparently has had a critical impact on industrial infrastructure that sits at the very foundation of modern economies, and that's from the New York Times.
Right, and I have a somewhat strange sideline role in that whole affair. And I was working for the Department of Homeland Security as a contractor back in 2004, and wrote a paper explaining the serious flaws in SCADA security, supervisory control and data acquisition, those networks that run our power grid and our water grid and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I explained in a paper to the Department of Homeland Security that a computer virus could be used to destroy physical equipment, pumps, generators, things like that. In 2006, at the Idaho National Labs, they did an experiment and proved that I was right. And that experiment was called the Aurora vulnerability, and you can look that up on Google, and it'll show it to you, where you can see a very expensive generator being destroyed by a cyber attack, where it actually jumps up and down on its mountings and breaks. And then 2 years later, Stuxnet comes out, and it destroys centrifuges in an Iranian nuclear facility by changing the speed controller a couple times a second.
Now, as this was been given the code name Titan Rain and Moonlight Maze, is this part of this this particular thing that's going on?
That's
attacks
not something
on the
I'm going to be
United
able to
States?
discuss. That's not something I can discuss.
Right, I see. So really what we're talking about is really kind of sabotage that can occur at any point in time and is occurring. Apparently there are thousands of attacks that are being thwarted at any point in time.
Well, actually, most of the attacks are successful.
Most of it is
very
successful.
few of the attacks are thwarted. Most of the attacks are successful. We have to make a distinction here. There's cyber espionage where you're just stealing data. And the Chinese got outed earlier this year by Mandiant about a multi-year program to steal information from all over the world, trade secrets, patents, industrial processes, and all that. And then offensive cyber warfare, where you're trying to degrade somebody's ability to conduct information operations, give them false information so they make bad decisions, or outright sabotage infrastructure.
So this is really a kind of psych war that we're talking about.
Well, you can kill people with a computer.
I mean, it's a little bit like what, not Lao Tzu, but Sun Tzu said in Art of War, which is that a war is won before it started in the minds of the generals. So if you can affect the psychological framework of people and plus the technology, then you can in effect make it's a kind of real cyber war. I mean, it has an impact, has an effect. People actually will be hurt and sometimes even killed through this particular process.
Well, that's what we call psyops, or psychological operations, where you degrade somebody's will to fight. In cyber warfare, you degrade somebody's ability to fight. And you have to understand that the Chinese definition of peace is not the cessation of hostilities. It is the continuation of hostilities by economic and political means. So just because you're not fighting somebody on the battlefield, the conflict continues in other means. And at no point has China ever ceased conflict with the United States.
So it's really very different from the way we're really raised about the whole concept of the nature of warfare, which is there's a winner and a loser. And in fact, the battle can be lost before it's even fought, in a sense. I mean, certainly, yes. One of the things that I know can be done, for example, is that the electrical power grid of a nation can actually be shut down. Is that correct? Yes. It is susceptible to cyber warfare.
Well, it's already happened. I would argue that the power market manipulations of Enron back a few years ago, when they were manipulating the spot price of power for economic gain, well, that caused the instability of the California power grid and rolling brownouts and rolling blackouts, and led to the change of the government of California, the recall of Gray Davis. Now, it wasn't that Enron was out to turn off the lights in California. They were just out for more profits. It had their business practices had the unintended effect of destabilizing the power grid. If they'd wanted to drop the power in California completely, they could have done so, just by manipulating the market prices.
Incredible vulnerabilities. We seem to live in a world now where a few individuals can have global impact on the entire planet through literally shifting little dials. I mean, it's kind of crazy that that we have this kind of vulnerability, that we're living on a planet like this. I mean, certainly if the electrical power grid in the Northeast was affected during the winter when it's 30 or 40 below, that would harm a lot of people.
Nowadays, we have, as average citizens, more rules, laws, and obligations since the time of the Roman occupation. But the Romans, unlike us, did not have computers, and no Roman emperor could change the planet with the flip of a switch at the purchase of an iPad or an Android. We now live in the age of information, the new cyber age. And if you're listening to the show, it's partially because of this technology, which was invented and developed, for the most part, in America. And yet, ironically, we have less and less real information for the necessary tools to survive and prosper. What in God's name is a cyber war? It's real. It's happening as we speak. And we're going to be talking about that, the cyber wars.
Back from the break, and this is today's Solutions with our special segment of America's Midnight Mysteries. And before we went to the break, we have Nick Mancuso, well-known Hollywood actor, legendary, and we have Kevin Henson from Cyber Defense Labs discussing cyber wars. And cyber wars is something that a lot of people, I guess, in their idealistic world or their own little world, don't even know that's happening. And before the break, they were really getting into a very in-depth discussion, more or less, about some of these attacks that are going on in our everyday lives that most people are not aware of. So let's get back into the discussion. And here we go.
So that was a really very interesting kind of beginning to what seems to be a pretty major problem. I mean, in terms of the entire planet, really, the whole nature of cyber war. Now, as I understand it, cyber espionage is also part of that. And as I understand it, cyber espionage is the act or practice of obtaining secrets, sensitive, proprietary, or classified information from individuals, competitors, rivals, groups, governments, and enemies for political, military, and economic advantage. And obviously the Internet and the softwares and the computers makes it very easy for classified information to sort of get out into the general agenda of the planet, and therefore have a massive impact on really the entire system, including, of course, the economic system. You were talking about how, before the break, California had been affected by an act of, I guess, cyber espionage or cyber attack. Can you continue talking about that?
Yeah. So back in the day, Enron was in the business of trading power. So because you can't store electrical power on a large scale, you have to know how much power you need at any given moment and produce that much power. If you have excess, you sell it across grid lines to somebody else. If you don't have enough power, you buy it. You predict how much power you're going to need tomorrow and next week with weather forecasts and computer models. Well, the people who buy and sell power use the same methods. Now, if you give false information or you manipulate the availability of power, you can drive the price up or down. It's basically very similar to stock manipulation. Well, Enron was using very fast computers and very good algorithms to trade power aggressively on the market and run the market price up so they could sell power at a higher price. This caused California to have to pay very much higher prices than anybody else for power and led to shortages. And eventually you had rolling blackouts, and then you had people calling for Gray Davis to be removed from office, and he was. Now, this was an accident driven by greed. If you wanted to change, people follow governments because governments provide services, whether it's power or safety or water. People expect things of their government. When the government doesn't deliver, people look for a new government. So hypothetically, you could force a change in the government of another place by simply taking away its services.
So in effect, you're creating a kind of military, a kind of junta that can occur in cyberspace. You can literally have people knocked out of positions of power and replace them with other people through this process, and also have tremendous impact on Wall Street and therefore on the lives of millions of people.
Yeah. Well, if you wanted to take a first world nation and send it back to third world status, power isn't just voltage, and it's not just amperage, it's also frequency. And everything from your computer to your alarm clock requires your power to be on a certain frequency, 60 hertz in the United States, 50 in Europe. But if you mess with the control pieces that do that, they keep the frequency balanced, you can cause damage to electronic devices and cause them not to work correctly. You get all sorts of neat, weird effects when you start playing with power frequency. And you can do that sitting at a computer, and you just attack a power node on a network and start getting things out of sync. And you can cause the power grid to destabilize while sitting at home in your bathrobe. Times past, to spy on somebody or sabotage something, you had to get an airline ticket. You had to go there, and you had to go through customs, and you had to run the risk of being in another country. Now, the Internet has made anybody in the world able to affect anybody else in the world without having to leave home. It has democratized hacking and espionage and sabotage so that any group of people with a point of view can do it. That's why
so you can effectively change the minds of people, and they're not even aware of how that occurred. Now, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, the NERC, issued a public notice that warns that the electrical grid is not adequately protected from cyber attack. And that means that basically, are there things in place to protect Americans from this kind of thing? And can it be done, actually?
Yes, it can be done. Is it being done? No. 95% of all of America's critical infrastructure belongs to private corporations and private companies. So NERC and FERC, the Federal Electrical Reliability Council, have rulemaking authority for reliability, but they don't really have a security mandate yet, and they don't have a way to enforce it. Your local public utility commission sets the rates your electrical company can charge. Your electrical company is trying to make a profit based on what it can charge you. So when you start saying, well, you have to put in this new security, the first thing they ask is, can I get a rate increase to cover the cost of this new technology? And normally the Public Utility Commission say no. So how is it if you're an electric grid operator and somebody says you need to add all this security to make yourself secure, and you say, well, I need more money to do that, and somebody says no, what do you do now?
So this is really, in a sense, a kind of cyber terrorism that we're talking about here.
Yes. I mean, I work with grid operators, I work with water utilities, and I help go in and find how they were attacked and help them fix it. That's part of my day job.
Okay, we're going to be going to commercial. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Here's your Leading Edge Radio Network consumer report from ConsumerAffairs.com. The FDA is moving to ban the use of all artificial trans fat in foods. The move is expected to eliminate about 20,000 heart attacks each year, as well as 7,000 deaths a year. Banfield Animal Hospital is the target of a class action lawsuit. The suit charges that Banfield sells an animal health protection plan, but it doesn't cover much of anything. Consumers say they end up paying top dollar, even though they're making monthly payments on the plan. Sounds a lot like human health insurance. Retailers are getting more and more nervous because surveys are showing that shoppers are not really in a spending mood this holiday season. The slow economy, not much job growth, and the government shutdown left consumers in a bad mood. I'm L.B. Lyon with your Consumer Report on Leading Edge Radio Network.
And we're back from the break, and this is your host from Today's Solutions, Kevin Bernard. And this next couple of shows will be the American Midnight Mysteries with Nick Mancuso, and you'll have several entertaining guests on. And before we went to the break, we're still continuing the discussion of cyber wars. So without further ado, here's Nick.
So, Kevin, we're in the middle of this really fascinating conversation about the whole nature of malicious software programs being used to actually attack entire nations. Now, apparently this is going on around the world, and from what I've seen and read about, there's a scenario called cyber shockwave, and it raised issues ranging from the National Guard to the power grid being affected. It means that it's very difficult to determine, apparently, the motivation and the attacking party. By the way, we're going to be having Michael Pare, Hollywood actor, on pretty soon to discuss all sorts of topics, including extraterrestrials. But I just want to address this particular issue of the fact that, for example, there was a cyber attack on a Georgian government website, which was carried out by Russia along with a military operation in South Ossetia. And in 2008, Chinese national hackers attacked CNN. So as you were pointing out, this is happening everywhere. Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
That is correct. In fact, right now, today, you've got Indonesians trying to frame Australia for cyber attacks. Frame, as in to set their IP addresses to be from an Australian host or to hack into an Australian host and then go from in Australia back to Indonesia and attack government targets in Indonesia to try to ratchet up the tensions between Indonesia and Australia. You have all sorts of what they call hacktivism, particularly that's hackers with a political motivation rather than an economic one. Lots of people steal money, and that's just not really a big surprise. But you've got people handing out high-dollar cyberware to anybody who's willing to hack a particular country. For example,
you say $5 cyberware, and you can do it.
Well, actually, most of the cyberware that's being handed around for free now cost between $5,000 and $15,000 in the black market. Things like Stuxnet and Flame and some of the other customizable attack frameworks that build botnets. I mean, you can rent a botnet from the black market. You can go down to the deep web and go to some place like Silk Road, and you can pay hackers to drop the competition's website. That'll cost you $30 or $40 an hour to keep somebody else's website offline. Now, if they're making $1 million an hour from the website, that really means something.
That's really insane. I mean, according to McPhee's George Kurtz, corporations around the world are facing millions of cyber attacks every day.
Yes.
Is that true?
That is absolutely true. You can, if you put a machine on the internet without a firewall and without antivirus, on average, it will last 30 to 45 seconds before attacked by somebody.
Well, I know my websites have been attacked and hacked, and I've had all kinds of problems with them. I mean, this is something that really is very disruptive to being able to do business and communicate. So these are, very serious. By the way, we're going to be having Michael Pare, Hollywood actor, on in a few minutes. Is he on right now? He's going to come and join the conversation.
No, he's not on right now. He'll be.
Yeah, he's on a train apparently right now, and he said
that's correct.
Call in. He would call in when the train stops. So we'll be hearing from Michael Pare very, very soon.
Hi, folks. This is Nick Mancuso, and tonight on our first show, we're going to be talking about cyber wars. Cyber wars, and we're going to be talking to Michael Pare, Hollywood actor, about that greatest of all mystery. Aliens, are they real? Stay tuned.
Here's your Leading Edge Radio Network consumer report from ConsumerAffairs.com. Want to sell your home fast? Okay, fine, but don't fall for one of those fast sell artists who stick up signs on telephone poles saying they pay cash for houses. It's a quick way to get a lot less than your house is worth. The best way to sell your house? Get a realtor with a good track record and listen to their advice. Something weird's been happening to Google Chromebooks. They've been refusing to let their owners sign in. Nobody seems to be quite sure what's causing the problem, but it's creating some big-time ill will among customers who rely on the cloud computers to get their work done. When your dog is limping around and looking like he's having a bad arthritis day, what do? Dose him up with ibuprofen or some other aspirin-like pain reliever? Well, it may be okay to do this, but you should check with your vet first. Doses for animals aren't the same as humans, and there are side effects you should watch out for. Ask your vet before you medicate your pet. I'm L.B. Lyon with your Consumer Report on Leading Edge Radio Network.
And we're back from the break, and this is today's Solutions with our special segment of America's Midnight Mysteries. Before we go on to continue our discussion with Nick Mancuso and Kevin Henson from Cyber Defense Labs, if you guys ever want to get in touch with me or another member, or you have any particular investigation that you think that needs to be conducted, you can reach us at www.maverickinvestigations.org, or you can just give us a call at 602-730-0180. So before the break, this is our American Midnight Mystery segment. And the next couple of shows will be dedicated to this particular segment. And it's very entertaining, and we're going to be talking about, for you listeners that just tuned in, we're going to be talking about some of the mysteries that you think about, but even if technically they've been solved, we're going to reinvestigate. We're going to thoroughly reinvestigate and see if there was another solution. Was this the truth, or this is just something that maybe the government told us to satisfy our ears, so to speak. So before the break, there was Nick and Mancuso and Kevin Henson with Cyber Defense Labs continuing their discussion, their in-depth discussion with cyber wars.
So we were just talking about that. Now, according to Representative Mike Rogers, chairman of the U.S. House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, his statement was that most Americans do not realize that the United States is currently in the middle of a cyber war. And we've been talking about this cyber war and talking about the fact that, for example, they're able to really hack just about anything, including bank accounts, right? And entire nations can be affected and transformed through this process of hacking. Can you talk a little bit about that?
My own company, the Cyber Defense Labs, we do penetration testing on networks to find the vulnerabilities so they can be fixed before somebody else finds them. Basically, we always get in. When we do a penetration test on whether it's a bank or a Fortune 500 company or a large retail outlet, the people that I work with, we always gain access. We always get the financial information we want. And we can always do pretty much whatever we want.
You say always. You mean you can hack and affect almost any bank account anywhere on the planet?
It's just like car theft. If somebody wants to bad enough and they spend enough time on it, they will get in. You know, if you can't pop the door lock, you break the window. When we set out to do a penetration test on a network, we basically always get in. It just sometimes it takes longer than others. So what you do is you harden the easy ways in. You know, you lock the doors, you bolt the windows. You try to make yourself a less vulnerable target than one of your competitors. And what you can't secure, you ensure. You make sure that you have backups of things. You make sure that there's not a single point of failure in your business. And that's really all you can do.
So cybersecurity is what we're talking about, and how to get it. Now, according to, apparently there's a severe shortage of computer security specialists. And it's estimated that there's only about 1,000 qualified people in the country today, but they need a force of 20,000 to 30,000 skilled experts to be able to handle the problem.
Yeah, the Chinese and the North Koreans graduate about 50,000 computer security people a year each. Right now, the Cyber Command has openings for about 6,000 people they can't fill. Now, over the weekend, there is hope. There is stuff being done about this. The U.S. Air Force Association is sponsoring a competition called Cyber Patriots, and it's training high school students to do defensive cybersecurity. And I'm actually sponsoring a four-man team right now. That's kids from 4 different North Dallas area high schools. And they learn computer security and learn to do all the things professional IT people do, but they're in high school. And they compete with teams from all over the country. So we're trying to raise the next generation of cyber warriors.
So this is something very important. Apparently, the People's Liberation Army is using information warfare units to develop viruses to attack enemy computer systems and networks. And, and these also include civilian computer professionals. Now, that is happening in China, and apparently is also happening, did you say Syria was one of the biggest ones?
Well, Syria, North Korea, Pakistan, the former Soviet Union. I've ejected the North Koreans out of my house network a couple of times. I have a network in my own home. My wife is a computer professional as well. And I have personal problems with foreign governments where I have to, lock down everything at my house and dissuade them from messing with the networks that my own children use.
So it's not just a threat to national security. These are individual threats. Individual civilians can also be affected very strongly by this.
Yeah, well, I was
just saying that you had mentioned to me in one of our previous conversations, I don't know if you're allowed to talk about it, about a situation in which you went in and you were working on a case like that, and you were able to divert monies from...
that's not one we're going to talk about on the air.
Right, you can't talk about that. But
I can't talk about that one on the air.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is being done, and for people that don't understand, what the implication of it is really is that it is possible through cyber warfare to have a massive influence. I mean, a massive influence on not just individuals, but on entire nations. And this is really what we're talking about: is what is cyber warfare, and how do we protect ourselves from it? And
if you're interested in researching it, there's two other terms you might want to write down and go out and Google. They're called effects-based operations and asymmetric warfare. And that is, how does a small, weak, underfunded group have a effect disproportionate to their size and power? How does a midget swing a feather and fell a giant? And
right, this is the butterfly effect.
Yes.
And
butterfly effect would be random. This is, you want very specific, you have a plan, and you know what you want to happen, and you just push the one weak spot to get what you want to occur. There's lots of ways to do it, and the sad thing is that some of these viruses that are being written out of China and North Korea and the former Soviet area automate the process of hacking, where you write this framework, you turn it loose, and then it co-ops not tens, not hundreds, not thousands, but tens of thousands or millions of computers become slaves to this program. So you can use millions of computers to attack one target. This is why we have what we call distributed denial of service, where 10 million cell phones suddenly call the CIA's website, and ask for information from it, and overwhelm it with requests. And that's one. So if you write one bug and you put it in a little app you give away for free, and it spreads through, your Android or your iPhone population, you can then use that to take over all those phones and get them to do something for you. And those kind of attacks happen every day.
Utterly uncanny. I mean, just as a person who doesn't know very much about this, you've certainly opened my eyes to a whole different reality, to, you might say, a midnight mystery. This is definitely a midnight mystery. And it's something that certainly has to be looked at. Are there any organizations that oversee this? Or does every country have its own mandate?
Yeah, the United States used to control the Internet. And then both under Bill Clinton and under Barack Obama, we've basically given up any real influence over the Internet and over standards. We've internationalized it. And now the Chinese are pushing the international standards, and they're pushing for less privacy on the Internet and more control, or what they think of as control. On the local side, we have the Computer Emergency Response Center out of Carnegie Mellon, CERT. We've got the FBI's Cyber Crime Task Forces out of every FBI office has a cyber crime squad. If you have fraud over, 250,000, they might be involved. Other than that, you have to deal with your local police on cyber things. When your local police can't handle the technical side of it, you call a firm like mine, cyberdefenselabs.org, and we handle a lot of that kind of work. So we do some of the investigative work and the collection and analysis and package it all up for law enforcement and go make the arrest.
How would people contact your organization?
www.cyberdefenselabs.org. Go to our website, drop us a line, and it'll come to us. I've got
www.cyberborg, did you say?
Cyberdefenselabs.org.
So, folks, if you're listening in and you are having problems in this particular area, this gentleman is the man to contact because he seems to know more than anybody I've ever talked to about this sort of thing. Now, apparently in 2010, Senator Joe Lieberman introduced a bill called Protecting Cyberspace as a National Asset Act. Was that ever passed? Do you know?
I don't believe so. There were some good intentions in the bill, and there were some significant problems with the bill, and I don't think it ever went anywhere.
And apparently this was called the Kill Switch Bill, which would grant the president emergency power over parts of the Internet. So was that ever passed through Congress?
No, but I think it ended up being done by executive order. The problem is the United States doesn't even own a quarter of the cyber assets that make up the Internet.
A quarter?
We don't even own a quarter of the assets that make up the Internet. So the president can kill the Internet in the United States, and that won't affect the rest of the world. It probably wouldn't even affect me personally. I have access to the Internet that doesn't go through either the East or West Coast main domain routers. So he can kill the Internet, and I'll still get to the Internet.
You mentioned to me there was something called the deep Internet, is that correct? Or deep?
Yeah, the deep web. There are parts of the Internet that you can't see unless you have an encrypted connection. It's like from the 1920s or 30s, it's like a speakeasy. Unless you know the password, you can't get there. There are places in the Internet where you can buy, well, Silk Road was busted a couple weeks ago. This is a website on the deep web that was selling assassins, illegal weapons, kilos of cocaine, people. You know, they were into human trafficking, having FedEx deliver you a pound or, of cocaine or heroin or whatever it is you wanted, illegal weapons, explosives, biological agents.
Incredible. So it's all underneath our nose and subliminal, and we have no idea unless we bring it out into the open. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Hi, folks. This is Nick Mancuso, and tonight on our first show, we're going to be talking about cyber wars.